episode of Virginia Beach Frontline Firefighter, Battalion Chief Billy Reynolds gives us part one of a two-part series on the recent ladder academy held in Virginia Beach. Captain John Rigoleau reviews tactics for confined spaces and the psychology of being able to handle the phobic wave while inside a confined space. I'm retired Master Firefighter Tom Parks, and you're watching Virginia Beach Frontline Firefighter. Here's your host, Virginia Beach Fire Department Public Information Officer, Art Kahn.
Hi, I'm Art Kahn, and welcome to this month's edition of Virginia Beach Frontline Firefighter. You know, recently the Virginia Beach Fire Department conducted its first ever ladder school. It went over pretty well, too. In fact, the information in that school was so useful, we think it should be shared with more than just the firefighters that participated in the first class. In our first segment, the first of a two-part series, Battalion Chief Billy Reynolds will review the techniques covered for forcible entry.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Billy Reynolds. I am a operational battalion chief with the Virginia Beach Fire Department, and I'm here to discuss our recent first ever week-long ladder academy that we hosted in Virginia Beach. The academy was really put together as a way to get newly assigned members and even new officers who were recently assigned to ladder companies, and even some of our tenured firefighters on ladders, the opportunity to come down to a week-long training. And during that week-long training, you would get two separate classes that were divided up. One would be the driver aerial operator portion, and the other portion, 3 days, would be basically hands-on, doing some ground ladder work as well as some forcible entry. Some of the things that we really honed in on a forcible entry day is the doors we had down there. Okay, there's different levels of difficulty that we can make those doors. And again, you'll see that in the video, looking at some of the training that our members were doing. If you looked at the doors, we started out, we had a whole cache of one-bys there. All right, so that one-by would start off pretty easy. And again, it was pine. And then we would increase the difficulty as our members got comfortable with the techniques we were demoing to them. So we started out with basically inward swinging doors, you know, approaching the door, sizing the door up. Which way does it swing? Is it a left hand? Is it a right hand? Are there any barriers next to you? And again, we built on that toward the afternoon where we were dealing with forcible entry in a confined spaced area. So the other piece of it is you approach the door. You always check the door. You try before you pry. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to structures, force a door, find out it was already unlocked. So as you approach that door, we teach things basically is you want to come check it, see if it's locked. Then you want to check the door. So some of the things we were looking at is you would see the members out here taking either the axe or the actual bar itself, the 30-inch Halligan, checking the door. Check the middle, check the top, check the bottom. The reason you're checking the door is to make sure that, hey, does the door flex at the top and bottom? We know that the center is going to have some type of latch or deadbolt or ancillary lock on it. But when you check an inward door at the top, if you have that door and it sounds hollow or it's flexing at the top, that's kind of telling me there may not be any other locks above it, because people add a host of locks on a door from the top all the way I've seen them down to the floor. And I'm talking about residential doors. So they check the bottom, same thing. They want to see if there's any flex or give in the door. Now you got to be careful when you're checking the door, because if you're using it as a battering ram and it's a cheaply constructed door and a cheap frame, that door is going to fail. You got to have control of the doors when you're checking them. So that you're either wrapping it and putting some type of choker hitch around the knob and key, or a piece of webbing and you're standing on it. So when you're checking that, that's the whole point there, is to check the locks. You're approaching the door. Well, we use the terminology gap, set, force. All right? You got to gap a door. What do you mean by gap it? Is you got to get an opening in order to get your bar in there. But depending how you use the tool is going to give you different advantages. All right? Whether you're using it to push, pry, or you're going to rock it up and down. And that's when I talked in about mechanical advantages. So we got to gap the door. Once you create that gap, now you got to set the tool. And as you're seeing our members perform these different techniques, they're setting the tool and the door. And then you apply force. And we use the terminology hit, 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 stop, drive. Now when I say drive one time, it doesn't mean drive, tink, tink. You know, when I say drive, you continue to drive that bar until you get it set appropriately to apply force to open that door. And anytime you're doing forcible entry is basically force equals acceleration times mass. Now, some of our ladder companies don't have an 8-pound axe. We've used sledgehammers for so many years. But the problem with the sledgehammer, and I was one of those people where I was a big advocate of the sledgehammer until recently, because of teaching forcible entry, is you have a smaller surface area to strike with a hexagonal head or a round part versus the flat head of the axe. And the heavier your axe is, no more than an 8-pound axe, no less than an 8-pound axe, is you're creating that force to drive that tool in there versus lighter axes. So that's the whole piece of the gap, set your tool in force. That's that drive piece in order to get it through there. So you saw our members out there using different techniques, whether they were using the adze, the fork, or whatever, to gap that door on an inward swinging door. Then the latter part of the morning, we were doing outward swinging doors. Same thing there. You still use your same techniques. Again, a lot of times with outward swinging doors, you're not dealing with a knob, a key, or some type of handle outside the open. I can almost guarantee that when you're forcing the door, that you've got to be smarter than that. But the majority of the doors that we're gaining into in our department, we can gain into with a good bar and a good forcible striking tool, i.e. the 8-pound axe. We went to single firefighter techniques because, like I said earlier in this video, there are times when you're going to be by yourself and you've got to pop a door. All right, you can very easily do that if you have the techniques and the skill set to do that. So that's where we had single firefighters attacking a inward swinging door. Same thing, we moved to an outward swinging door. So you've got to take the time and you have to communicate with each other. And always, always, always carry 2 lights with you. Try to have one mounted on your helmet because wherever your head goes, that light's going to shine down, especially when you're doing forcible entry, and have that light on your jacket. Or 2 lights, I don't care where they're mounted. Bring them with you. You're going to need them inside a structure. Hey, this is just some quick tips I wanted to go over with you with some forcible entry. Next month, we'll be talking about ground ladders.
The fear of confined spaces, better known as claustrophobia, is, believe it or not, quite common among firefighters. But at the end of the day, firefighters have a job to do, and certain fears must be confronted. In this next segment, Captain John Rigoleau reviews the techniques used when working in confined spaces, how to get out of an entanglement, and the psychology behind the phobic wave.
Hey, I'm Captain John Rigoleau of Fire Rescue 2 on the A shift. Today on Frontline Firefighter, I'm going to talk about confined spaces and how they relate to the firefighter and you respond to carry out your duties at a fire ground. When we talk about confined spaces, what comes to mind typically is the industrial setting. In the industrial setting, there are vats, vaults, pits, process vessels, things like that that workers go into on a regular basis to perform their duties. At a structure fire, when you respond in, you may be required to go into a confined space. If you look at the structure behind me, a lot of confined spaces are really evident. In that, you have the crawl space, the attic. Those are 2 very prevalent confined spaces that you as a firefighter may have to enter into. The Occupational Safety Health Administration defines a confined space as a space large enough for an employee to enter, has limited means of egress, and is not really designed for you to stay there, to hang out there. That's what fits the bill for the attic and the crawl space. Some not so evident confined spaces would be during the performance of your interior firefight if there is a collapse. Things drop in. That room now becomes a confined space by definition. It has limited means of egress, hard to get in, hard to get out. It's entrapping the employee, so that's a problem there. And certainly it's not designed for you to stay there. So those are some of the things that we run into on the fire grounds. We're going to talk about the hazards of these different spaces and how to work yourself through those hazards. If you were hired by the Virginia Beach Fire Department in the last 8 to 10 years, most likely you have worked your way through recruit school and gone through the McDonald's boxes. In the McDonald's boxes, we show you how to profile and work your way through those different hazards that hang you up in the event that you're caught up into a collapse or wiring, ductwork, things have come down and have trapped you. We're going to discuss ways to work through that. One part of the confined space response that we rarely talk about is the psychological effects. As humans, we don't necessarily like to be in confined, tight areas. When we do that as part of our job, sometimes it's overwhelming and makes us to where we can't perform or not be comfortable in the environment that we're working in. Today we're going to discuss some of the ways to work through that and how to safely get into and exit confined spaces. This crawl space represents a type of space you may be required to go into at an incident. In just turnout gear, fairly easy to enter into this space and operate. However, put a SCBA on and now need to enter that space because maybe there's an atmospheric problem, potentially it's on fire, you're checking for extension, whatever the case may be, with that BA on higher profile, it's going to be more difficult to enter into this space. One of the hazards that's in this space, one, it could be very confining, so you may become entrapped. Typically, our rescue plan would be, we'll cut a hole in the floor to extract the firefighters if there's a true emergency as they're crawling through this confined space or this crawl space to do whatever their task may be while they're under there. Some things happen psychologically when you enter into a confined space. Many people have claustrophobia of some sort. If you really have claustrophobia, you'll never be able to enter a room. You have problems just entering into a room. But all of us have some little bit of claustrophobia. We don't like to be in tight spaces. One way to overcome that is to realize that and expect what's called the phobic wave. As you enter into the space, you're going to be comfortable, you're focused on the task at hand. As you begin operating in there, maybe you become fatigued, your mind starts to wander, and this wave of phobia starts to come over you where maybe you become trapped or something's going to happen bad while you're in the space. The way to work through that is to focus on the task at hand, slow, steady breaths, control your breathing, and again, work on the task at hand to work through that phobic wave and expect it to happen. And it's just that. The wave starts off slowly, it builds gradually, it peaks, it crashes, and then it passes. You perform your task, and then you exit out from that confined space. It's easily said, hard to do, particularly if you're not comfortable in those confined spaces. So how do you fix that? Work in confined spaces, that's the best way. If you avoid them, that avoidance just reaffirms your fears and stops you from being able to function in a confined space. This crawl space, again, is a confined space. In a few moments, we're going to go take a look at an attic space, where we often go to check for extension after a room and content fire. Those are confined spaces as well. Before entering into this space, it's a great idea to control the utilities, make sure there's no electrical issues, gas, things like that are all taken care of before entering into this space. As we continue looking at confined spaces you may run into at the fire ground, we're here at a 2-story single-family wood frame structure with an attic. We're on the 2nd floor and we have an attic access. Now this in attic access world, that's a very large attic access and we want to be very easy to enter even with an SCBA on. Typically we find them much smaller, or maybe they're hidden in a closet. This one happens to be in the top of the stairway. Sometimes they'll be pulled down stairs that you'll pull down and have easy access up, which makes it really easy for the firefighter to go up and gain access to the attic. The hazard of those pull down stairs, though, is the limited weight that they'll support. So we gotta be careful of how many firefighters get on it or who we put on it so we don't cause those to collapse. As we enter into the attic space, this one has a very low ceiling, if you will. So the distance that you have to move, or the amount of space you have to move around in this attic is very limited. So you're going to be crawling from ceiling joist to ceiling joist as you work your way to whatever your mission is as you enter into that space. Some of the hazards of working in the attic. Well, obviously falling through is a big problem. If you're not careful where you step, that may be a problem. So we need to make sure that we stay on the rafters. Another hazard could be electrical. There could be HVAC systems, gas lines, things like that. Also, where do most people store things? In the attic. So there's another hazard you may run into is a lot of debris in that attic. So how do we work in that space? Again, just like we talked about for the confined spaces underneath the house, common sense. Slow your breathing down, be aware of your surroundings, and work through whatever the problem is. A hazard not so obvious is where the joists, particularly if there are prefab joists, where they come together and those angles, they represent a converging area that maybe if you slip and fall into could be an entrapment hazard. It's recommended you go into the attic, the 2 members go in, or at least 1 member will go into the attic and a second firefighter will stay at the attic access watching the progress of the firefighter working in the attic and be able to assist them if indeed they need help. Another type of confined space you may find, particularly at a single family residence, is an area or void space behind the knee walls. At this particular structure, they've closed off the 2nd floor. They've built a couple of walls. They've created a storage area, and then behind that storage area is a void space. It's really part of the attic. Many times we'll have fires on the 2nd floor or even on the 1st floor, and fire will get behind the knee walls and it's very difficult to put out. So that's where aggressive opening of the walls, the ceilings from downstairs or the floor below will help you get to the seat of that fire. If there's a thing like maybe an electrical short or a small fire where you're required to go into this void space to check for extension or to do some overhaul, it could be a challenge to get into there. Again, with no SCBA on, a fairly large opening here, it'd be very easy to get into there. put a breathing apparatus on, and now be a little more difficult to work in that space. Same hazards exist. It's tight, it's confining, there's potential for fall through, a potential for entrapment. How do we work through that? Again, we expect that phobic wave. We overcome that wave by concentrating on our task at hand, controlling our breathing, get into the space, get the job done, and get out. What would be our emergency procedures if there truly was an event in the space where we needed to extract the firefighter? For the rescue companies, we're going to just open the walls up. Even the ladder companies, engine companies, anybody could do that, but we'll open up the walls and extract the firefighter if indeed that needs to happen for that rapid extrication. So something you may notice at the entrance to this knee wall or void space behind the knee wall is we found an electrical panel. It appears this electrical panel is for the HVAC systems that are located in this void or attic space. It goes to show you, you never know what you'll find as you're working through the structures. Maybe the power was controlled at the main panel box. There's a sub feed coming over to this. Maybe or maybe not, it's been controlled. So if you come across a panel box like this, you may want to go ahead and throw the breakers, turn it off. Even though the power has been secured, you're not sure how things are fed in the structure. So a good, safe thing to do, control the power whenever you can. Another hazard of confined spaces, or a type of confined space, would be a collapse has occurred. In the city of Virginia Beach, we have a number of neighborhoods that have heat strips in the ceilings. While still most likely not being used for heat, they're still there. And should the ceiling collapse and that wire and that heat all comes down and could entangle the firefighter. In a commercial setting, all the things in the overhead, the duct work, the wiring, the communications, things like that, they drop down, they represent an entrapment hazard for the firefighter. While maybe not a confined space, they represent or they have the hazards of a confined space, and this is an engulfment or an entanglement hazard. Here at the Fire Training Center, we have the McDonald boxes. As I said earlier, if you've been to recruit school in the last 8 or 10 years, most likely you have crawled through the McDonald's box. Today I have Master Firefighter Mike Kellerh from Rescue 2B shift with me, and Mike is dressed, ready to go to work, and he's going to work his way through the McDonald's box. One thing about Mike that we should notice is he has a hand tool with him. Always important to have a hand tool with you. Forcible entry, forcible exit, but also to help you work through these entanglements. That might be what will save your life. Additionally, Mike is carrying tools in his his turnout gear. In his upper right pocket, he has a pair of side cutters. They can be used for a number of things. It could be a simple electrical short where you need to take and cut some wires to remove the hazard. Or maybe it's an entanglement and you need to cut your way out to save your life or the life of your fellow firefighter. What's important to note is where Mike's carrying those. They're up here, high on his body, where he can get to them. A lot of firefighters will carry gear in the pants pockets or the bellows pockets of their turnout pants. That's okay, but they're hard to get to, particularly if you're trapped or you're entangled. So having a set of cutters up high is a really good idea. What Mike's going to do is now enter into the McDonald box and demonstrate some techniques that could be utilized to work through the McDonald's box. One thing about this, psychologically, it's a challenge. Because once you get in there, it's very close, it's very tight, you're breathing the air out of your SCBA, it just wraps you up, and by human nature, we don't necessarily like that. You're entangled. Your biggest asset now is composure. Work your way through the problem, maintain your composure, slow your breathing down, and then focus at the task at hand. In this case, the task is going to be to untangle or remove the entanglement or entrapment hazards and work your way out of the situation you're in. Of course, this would be a great time to call a mayday. We should not hesitate to call a mayday once you're wrapped up. If you can reach your radio, get to it, call mayday, and then begin the disentanglement process. We often talk about profile in the bottle, swim techniques. There's a number of ways to work your way out of an entrapment. Again, your biggest asset in a situation like this is composure, working your way through the problem to effect a self-rescue. If not, the RIT team will come get you. So Master Firefighter Kellerh is now going to enter into the box. He's just not going to haphazardly enter the space, so he's going to push in, he's going to feel the entrapment, and he's going to begin to work on the techniques to get through that. He's going to identify the hazards, and again, start working through, hey, how can I work through the entrapment to get through to the other side? He'll profile, he'll feel, he'll take his time, he'll work his way through it, almost as if it goes one wire at a time, if you will, to work his way through the hazard. So as he works his way through, he's feeling for the entrapments, feeling how he's being caught up. And of course on our breathing apparatus, there's many different places that wires can grab and hold on to as you're crawling through this entanglement. One thought would be is to profile the bottle over into the corner, because we know that's a great place where there shouldn't be any wires, and gives the bottle a place to nest into. Another technique would be the swim technique. You pretty much grab the wire and you swim through that wire to work through the entanglement hazard. So Master Firefighter Kellerhals is working his way through the box. He's well into it now, and he's used a number of different techniques. He's been swimming, he's been profiling the bottle, he's accessed his cutters, and he's cutting the wires, working his way through the hazards that he's dealing with. One thought would be to close your eyes. Why? Well, it helps you relax, helps you envision what's going on around you, and you use feel and other senses to work your way through it. If you're in a smoke-filled environment, you're really not going to see much, so close your eyes. Perhaps it helps you relax, control the breathing, calm down, work through the problem as you cut, profile, swim to work your way through the problem. So as Mike's exiting the McDonald's box, he had to profile the SCBA cylinder. He never took it off of his back, but he loosened the straps enough to move it around to get him the right profile to exit out. As we looked at the house earlier with the attic access, the crawl space access, and the knee wall access, we want to make sure that we never take the SCBA off our backs. It must always stay on our back. That's a requirement. Years ago, we would teach our firefighters to do that. No more. SCBA must always stay on your back no matter what the hazard is. On this segment of Virginia Beach Frontline Firefighter, we've talked about confined spaces and how they relate to the firefighter. We know that when we respond to incidents, structure fires, you have the potential to enter into confined spaces. What we ask is that you do it safely, cautiously, and you apply common sense as you work through these confined spaces. Should you find yourself trapped, entangled, again, common sense, composure, relax, work through the problem, maintain your composure, call a mayday. Take care of yourself, take care of your partners. If you have any further questions, I'm Captain John Rigoleau at Fire Rescue 2A Shift.
What are you gonna do?
We're all gonna go like this.
Okay. Hi, this is Captain James Branch. Hi, this is Captain James Branch. Welcome to another. Welcome to an edition of Virginia Beach Frontline Firefighter. Welcome to this edition of Virginia Beach Frontline Firefighter. Again, welcome to this edition of Virginia Beach Frontline Firefighter. Okay.
Bam!
How's the sound, Darnell? Still hearing him pretty good, huh? I was a little out of breath, though, when I was going through the suggestions, ideas, or comments. Has anybody got a rock about this size? Son of a... I'm really beginning to hate that guy, man. I really am. Somebody go over there and tell him he's costing the city thousands of dollars a minute.
We're going to be demonstrating the Weddle tool and its usages on, I had to redo that.
Finally, on this segment, we want to talk to you about a new type of lock that we've found during our pre-plans. And wheels falling off.
Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, please contact me at the information below.
Welcome to this edition of the Virginia Beach Marine Team Frontline Firefighter.
Right on the set.
Hey, can you guys keep it down? I'm working here. I'm trying to do a job here. Don't put that on the bloopers. I will come find you.
Hi, this is Kevin, and welcome to Virginia Beach Company 3, home of the Hazardous Materials Team. And we want to welcome you to this edition of Virginia Beach Frontline Firefighter.
Well, that's going to do it for this month's edition of Virginia Beach Frontline Firefighter. As always, we encourage you to send in any comments or suggestions you might have for future segments to Kirk Kellerhals at the information you see on your screen. We also remind you to watch us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. For Virginia Beach Frontline Firefighter, I'm Mark Kahn.
Should old acquaintance be forgot, and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup o' kindness yet for days of old lang syne. We twa here on about the braes and put the gowans fine, but we've wandered many a weary fet since day.